Toad in the hole, how delicious. Today in the lodge we're going to be cooking some toad in the hole. I'm going to make a Yorkshire pudding batter. It's the same recipe I use for making normal Yorkshire puddings as well, so that's quite useful to know. We've got some wet wang bangers. These are from Alison Sutcliffe at Bluebell Farm. Delicious sausages. There's going to be 6 of us eating tonight, so we've got 12 sausages, 2 each. I've got 6 eggs. We're going to need some full fat milk, water and plain flour and some salt. I'm going to make it in a jug and whiz it up with a stick blender. So what I need to do is take the eggs. You put your jug or utensil that you're going to make the batter in on a scale, switch it on and set it to 0, and you need to take the weight of these eggs once you've cracked them into your jug. So here we go. Just put these in here. I've got 1 egg per person, usually about right. This has been a big request of everyone here at the moment, so everyone's very happy that this is what they're having for their supper tonight. So I've got 350 grams of liquid egg, and then you need to weigh in 350 grams of flour and 350 grams of liquid, and I'm going to use half milk, half water. So that'll be 175 grams of each of milk and water. So I'll wash my hands first and then I'll add the flour in. Got my 12 sausages here. I'm going to drizzle a little bit of rapeseed oil over them. I've got the oven at the moment set on 180. These are going to go in for 15 minutes or so, just to brown them slightly, and I'm going to put some goose fat in with them too. You can use beef dripping, whatever you want. We want to get a little bit of fat out of this because that's what's going to make the gravy that comes out of there. Goose fat and rapeseed oil are a really good combination to use because it gives the goose fat a higher burn point, particularly for roast potatoes, and makes them really nice and crispy. And that's rapeseed from Yorkshire rapeseed oil. So that's going to go into the oven now at 180 for 15 minutes or so, just to start cooking them. And then once I've taken them out after 15 minutes, I'm going to turn the oven right up to 220 because you need the oven really hot for Yorkshire pudding. Which I would have it at if I was just cooking Yorkshire pudding on its own. But just want to get these sausages started, so that's the first job. Our sausages have had 15 minutes in the oven now, so I'm going to grab them out. Sizzling nicely. Ooh. Be careful when you get them out, it's going to be really hot. You've got hot fat in there, so what I'm going to do is tip most of it out, and that's going to make our gravy. Now there should be enough fat in the bottom there to cook the batter, but what we need to do is get the oven really hot now, so 220 degrees, and then we're going to put these sausages back in to make them really nice and hot before we add the batter. So we'll just wait a couple of minutes and then I'll pop them back in the oven. Whilst we're waiting for the oven to heat up, we get the batter. And I'm just going to add a little bit of really cold water. I've got water from the fridge. If you can, before you do this, just put some water in the fridge to cool right down, or put some ice cubes in it. And I'm just going to add a little bit of that just to loosen this batter up slightly, just to make it slightly more runny. So you want it sort of the consistency of double cream. So we'll have that ready to pop in the pan when we're ready. Our fat in there, that's going to be a nice base for the gravy. So we'll add in a tablespoon or 2 of flour, and then I'm going to mix that in, and that will form the base for my gravy. That's the sauce base. We're going to use, to make the gravy, water from cooking vegetables. So I've cooked some carrots to go with this. Whatever vegetables you want to cook, use the water from that to make your gravy. So that's really nice and hot in there now. I'm going to add in this batter. Most of it, just leave a little bit there, there's a little bit left. And that's going to go back in the oven now for 20 minutes to get that nice and puffed up at a really hot temperature. My toad in the hole has been cooking for 20 minutes at 220, so I've turned it down now to 180. I'm going to cook it for a further 10 minutes just to make sure that the Yorkshire pudding batters cook through. I do exactly the same when I'm cooking normal Yorkshire puddings as well. I've got here on the hob the roux, which is the fat that came off the sausages, and some flour, and I'm just cooking that just for a couple of minutes. This gets rid of the floury taste, and I've got my cooking water from the carrots. I've also got here this is called Old Jake's Gravy Saviour. This is a flavouring and browning for your gravy. Be careful though, it's super salty, so just make sure that you don't add too much, but it does add an extra bit of flavour. So just a couple of minutes cooking that, and then we'll add some of the water. If you add things in at a sort of similar temperature, they mix better too, so they don't go lumpy. If you put cold liquid into a hot fat mixture like that, it would just seize it and go really lumpy straight away. So add it in a little at a time. You can have a whisk ready as well to give it a whisk so that you get rid of any lumps if they start to form, and we'll get that boiling. If you bring it to the boil, then you can keep adding water till you get to the desired consistency for your gravy. Our family like gravy quite thick, so I'll just keep adding a little bit until I've made enough gravy in there for us to have with our toad in the hole. That needs to then come to the boil and needs to cook for 4 or 5 minutes, again just to get rid of that floury taste. And also we're going to add a little at a time of the gravy saviour, because obviously it looks quite pale in colour. So if you don't want to use that, you can use gravy browning. If your sausages rather have got really nice and brown, they will impart a little bit more colour to your gravy too from when you poured that fat off. So that's bubbling now. It's sort of a good consistency, a little bit thick, so we'll still add a little bit more. Everyone likes a good dollop of gravy with toad in the hole, and we'll just add some of this gravy saviour. Whisk that in, you'll see it gets a really nice colour. Just going to add a little bit at a time because I don't want it to get too salty. So just taste that. Add a little bit more. A bit more in there, give it a bit more flavour. But just do it little by little, because as I say, it is quite salty, so you don't want to do too much. So that should be okay now. Just have another little taste. And then that's good. Put that to one side. Just let that bubble away just for a few minutes until our toad in the hole's ready, which should be another couple of minutes. So there we have our toad in the hole. Lovely, light, crispy, fluffy batter. 2 sausages each. I'll just cut that into there. Use a tin that you're not worried about using a knife in, because you're going to need to get a knife stuck in there to get the toad in the hole out. So you don't want to use your best non-stick pan. So there we go. Good portion of toad in the hole. And we're having with it some leek and wild garlic mash, which you can find a video link to. Some braised Savoy cabbage, again another video for that. And a few carrots, which I used cooked to make the gravy with. So a few of those on there as well. A good traditional Yorkshire tea. And of course, plenty of gravy. So there we go. Toad in the hole with leek and wild garlic mash, braised red cabbage, carrots and gravy.